Welcome to Disability Empowerment Now, Season 4, bonus episode, Who's Counting Now Anyway? I'm your host, Keith Murfee DeConcini. Today I'm talking to Jessica MacLean. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Hi, Keith. Thank you so much for having me.
So we met in a very interesting way on a social media site because that's how people meet these days. Uh, you're a poet
Mhm.
and a writer who has a disability.
Yeah, exactly. So I was born with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome and spina bifida occulta. Hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, most likely. It's the diagnosis for EDS is really difficult. The genetic testing is like 10,000, thousands of dollars, and just the appointment is $2,000. And then there's no genetic test for the most common type that I've tested for the way that is allowed to be tested for that one, or the way that there is a test. So it's like a clinical test for that one. And it's a sheet of paper, and there's all these different criteria, different sections, and you have to meet two or three or however many from each section. And so that's the diagnostic right now for hypermobile. And then spina bifida occulta, occulta means hidden. So there's like a gap in my vertebra, and it's not really very outwardly noticeable. I mean, there's some little things that you can see, but and then that can cause, between the two conditions, I have a bunch of comorbidities now. EDS is kind of a condition of comorbidities, and then spina bifida occulta also can, of course, cause more low back problems.
So, what exactly is EDS for those who don't know?
So that one is kind of complicated. It's a tissue connectivity disorder, and it involves faulty collagen production. And so it involves every single system in the body. Um, the eyes, the skin, the organs, the joints, the bones, the veins, um, nervous system, every single part of your body, teeth. So like we'll have problems in those areas, in every area of the body. And certain types of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, there's over a dozen types of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, um, subtypes. Um, some of those have different pronunciations, like a more dramatic pronunciation of certain comorbidities than other than maybe another. Some types, maybe your skin is more affected, like the classical type, or hypermobile, maybe your joints will be more affected than other types.
What would you like finding out you had? What would you like finding out you had? Pardon me.
Don't worry about it.
So, what would you like finding out you had these conditions, and how did you process that? And how did you eventually adapt your life to living with those conditions and then all the com
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So each diagnosis is sort of a new adaptation. And each diagnosis is like what you're saying, it's another hit. Um, it's more pain, it's more adaptations, it's more disability, it's losing more friends, it's losing um, more abilities and more life, really, and capabilities that it limits your life so much, to a certain degree that you can't almost do much of anything. So Finding out about each diagnosis was hard. I was a child when it all started. I had tubes in my ears as a baby, and then frequent bronchitis. And I was motion sick. I was in physical therapy for my knee. I had Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, and my kneecap was off track. Tracking issues are common. That was when I was 12. And then I got like TMJ in my late teens, and psoriatic SIBO psoriasis that eventually turned into psoriatic arthritis just recently. And I was maybe 17 or something when I got diagnosed with SIBO psoriasis. That's an autoimmune condition. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. TMJ, I had my first migraine when I was 7 years old, and I vomited from it when I was 7 years old. And so migraines are common for people with EDS. So
But
each thing,
seven.
7. So I was taking
Wow.
prescription
Okay.
migraine medication at 14 years old. So the doctors were prescribing me
Wow.
very intense, medications that a 14-year-old probably should not be taking. And then I started to have to take preventatives soon after that. And then I was taking some anti-seizure medication for a while that was making my limbs go numb. And I mean, it was the side effects of that were anyway. So it's been, a journey. And then my back broke when I was taking care of my elderly dog. So I have bilateral vertebra fractures on that same vertebra that has the spina bifida, and they say it's weaker. So I was taking care of him. I fell asleep on my couch sideways for 2 hours. I mean, it was a comfortable couch, and I was just positioned incorrectly, and that broke my back. And now I have cysts in my low back filled with spinal fluid. And those are called Tarlov cysts. And there's only 3 neurosurgeons in the country who treat those, and they're not actually curable. They're only treatable, and really they're not. The treatment is riskier than the condition, and it will not cure it. So it will come back, the treatment. So it's like you're risking, you find these 3 neurosurgeons in the country to treat it, you get it treated, and then it comes back, or you're worse off than you were. And then I have spondylolisthesis, which is like a shifting, and that kind of runs in the family. So yeah, it's been very difficult. They say that you have to oscillate between acceptance and distraction. And so I've done a lot of that, like going out to live local music here in Prescott. And it's just a vibrant community. I'm a writer and author, and competing in poetry slams, to bring awareness to my conditions. And so we just have to do our best. But then the reality of it is sometimes our best is not going to be good at all. And sometimes the pain, like last night, I was just crying and literally just moaning and wailing for hours. And that's not normal for me, but I was just laying still. I had stretched too much the night before, and sorry about all the ums. It's a lot to process.
Yeah.
And to feel in your body all of the time, and to always have problems and always have things happening. So I think things like hot tubs have helped me a lot, and medical marijuana has helped me a lot. I'm not on any prescription medications anymore at all. I'm 42 now, and I have way more conditions than when I was a teenager and was already beginning my prescription medication, regimen, I guess. And so for me, natural things have been imperative. Spring water, healthy food, anti-inflammatory food, hot tubs. I did a cold plunge a couple times, but it hurt my chest and heart. And heart symptoms, heart conditions are common for people with EDS. So I talked to a heart doctor, actually. I met him at the courthouse here in Prescott. And he immediately knew. Sorry?
That's a very strange and weird place to meet a
Doctor?
doctor. I
Yeah.
mean,
We became
okay.
we became friends. He came up to me with his dog, and I had a mat on like a thicker mat, not a yoga mat, but a thicker one on the grass. And he knew I had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. He knew I had EDS just looking at me. He said, "Do you have EDS?" And I
Wow.
was like, "Yeah." Yeah, I'm a so EDS is a spectrum condition.
Yeah.
Someone like me is like way further on the spectrum, worse off with the condition. And so somebody else with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome could be relatively healthy. And so you might judge somebody else with EDS as, being a hypochondriac, which is incredibly common. Munchausen syndrome. Children are taken from their parents all the time. So anyway, he met me at the courthouse and he said, "Do you have heart? Does your heart kind of flutter sometimes?" So he already knew my condition and my heart condition before I said a word, and my heart symptoms. And that's not normal for people with EDS, but it's because he's a cardiologist and he's seen a lot of patients with EDS because heart conditions are common for us. But other doctors do not know about EDS. They don't know the comorbidities. I go in and get my blood drawn and I try to warn them about how fragile I am. And the person drawing the blood has never heard of EDS. So it's kind of dangerous for us.
What is kind of dangerous?
Just living, honestly. I get
I
hurt.
didn't want to put words in your mouth. That's why I asked.
Medical treatment is dangerous for us. Medical testing, anything medical is dangerous for us. If we get prescribed a new medication, we're probably going to have some serious reaction. If we get, a surgery or some other treatment, it's probably going to cause more things than it's going to benefit. So, even limiting that cardiologist told me to stop seeking diagnosis and to find comfort. So he pretty much said, "Don't come into my office. Don't find out what your heart condition is. You have enough diagnosis. You have dozens of diagnosis already. I have 3 kinds of arthritis. I have osteoarthritis, arthritis in my neck that's called degenerative facet arthropathy. And then now I have psoriatic arthritis. My nails have been having issues and growing into my skin. And so that adds like another layer of pain trying to manage that. That's the only prescription I have is like topical creams at this point. A lot of people with EDS can't manage that, and they're on a whole list of medications from their doctors, and they're getting all sorts of injections and treatments. And sometimes those things can help, but sometimes they can make us worse too. And it's difficult to know where the line is.
So, how did you become a author and a poet?
Well, I became a writer. I started working in marketing out of college, and I interned at Honeywell in their marketing department when I was still in college before my senior year, and then started working in marketing communications and writing press releases and writing marketing stuff and emails and all sorts of things, flyers. And so then I started writing poetry when I was young, in elementary school, and I won a poetry contest in like 5th grade. And so I think I've always been up that alley. And then when I was a senior in high school, my
Hold on,
teacher,
hold on. So, you've always been a poet. You won a poetry slam contest when you were in elementary school, and that was the proverbial bug that bit you up. How did you become an author, and what do you write besides poetry, or is it just poetry?
I write just about everything. So I became an author I had bumped my head, so people with EDS don't heal like other people. And if we get a head injury, we're probably not going to heal like other people. We're going to need more rest. And doctors probably aren't going to be aware of that to give us that advice. And so that was kind of what started the book. I had moved. I was really brain injured. I wasn't really moving around and going out and doing things all that well. Um, I wasn't in a great place mentally. My mom passed away, and she was bedridden and sick, and sort of just died one day. And her autopsy kind of said tachycardia, but that's not really a cause of death. So her autopsy is pretty inconclusive. We think it might be chemical related. And then I got her laptop, and it had a document from my grandma that said Chuck and Jerry, a love story. And it was about 12 pages long, and it didn't have like dialogue really in it or anything. So I just took that, and that was what started the book. And I started to find other documents written by like my other grandma and my great uncle on the other side. And I knew some things, of course, and I had a bunch of pictures. So I just started to piece it all together.
And so you added on and finished the work, the written work left by your mother and your grandparents.
And my grandma had like folders of different, the cabin, the old cabin, um, houses that my papa was a home builder, so different things. She was Mrs. Arizona, so a folder for Mrs. Arizona, and it had all these cool old pictures, and sometimes there was even documents, that were in there that were helpful as well. All that little bits of information can really be helpful. And yeah, I took her document and added to it. Sometimes I used some of her own words.
So, what is that book called?
Oh, it's called Arizona Rain.
Arizona Rain.
It's on Barnes and Noble, and then for sale here in Prescott at like Charlotte Hall Museum, if it's still there. Peregrine Book Company, really not beautiful bookstore. And then on Whiskey Row at a museum, Prescott Western Heritage Center, and then at
Yeah.
Phippen Museum, a really cool cowboy museum.
Have you always lived in Prescott?
Well, my grandparents built cabins up on the top of Mount Tridal, which is about 30 minutes outside of town here, real rustic. So I grew up going there. And when I was a kid, I lived in kind of the Glendale, Peoria, Phoenix area. And then I moved to Camp Verde for about 5 years. And before my back broke and before my head was quite as bad, I lived in my RV for about a year with my ex-husband and our dogs. And we were really adventurous and had a great time.
Nice.
Hmm. Yeah, it was neat.
And so you mentioned that you were really chemically sensitive.
Mhm.
Can you talk more about that and how that manifests in uh, what severity is like? I mean, you mentioned last night you were in extreme pain, uh, more than you've been in a while, and I mean, that just sounds awful, horrible, and extremely taxing. Uh,
That can be. Yeah, it was literal head to toe pain. Every single part of my body hurt. Fingers, hands, legs, arms, toes, everything hurt. And yeah, it can be taxing and difficult. I try to not get to that point. But so what was your first question? Sorry.
uh,
I lost my train of thought there.
the chemical
Oh, yes.
sensitivity.
Okay, so that developed. It was always kind of there, I think, in the background, or the susceptibility to it was. I was detecting like the burns around here, the pile burns that the Forest Service was doing. And I was getting sick from these small pile burns. And I talked to the burn boss, and he was like, you must be chemically sensitive because that's really sensitive. And so and then there was some construction projects and different things around me, and I started to like get this funny taste in my mouth around chemicals and a coating on my tongue. And then like my nose would bleed and I would even spit up blood. And then I started to lose weight. And so I weighed like maybe 150 pounds or something when the chemical sensitivity developed, and now I'm down to about 110. And so in a short time, I lost enough percentage of my body weight that the doctors are, that's an alarm if you look it up. That's like death if you look it up. So, um, it was really scary. And then I started to develop other symptoms where I would get a headache from it, and I would get stomach symptoms and wouldn't be able to hold my food down or whatever sometimes. And one time I ended up in the ER and I couldn't walk after vomiting so much, and I needed potassium to stay alive, really, and needed to rest quite a bit after that. And so that was a real intense exposure. That's happened a couple times where I vomited. And I tried to go to the hospital here once in Prescott. That was when I was living in, or I was over in Sedona one of the times. But here in Prescott, the hospital is kind of in a chemically area, and then the hospital itself is really chemically inside. I can just smell this funny chemical smell. Um, so I tried to go there one night, and I ended up vomiting when I got home anyway. So, and I just waited and waited and waited and then just came home. So, it's kind of like you just have to leave the bad air, is what most people say. Some people say that chemical sensitivity isn't real. But I absolutely know it is. And there's times where I will start to detect chemicals, and then I will leave and I'll see like a bug vehicle, like a bug spray, a pesticide company, or a painting company, or a roofing company, or something like this where it's confirmation. I don't think I've ever actually been wrong when I've detected the chemicals.
So, how do you manage? How do you get through your day? How do you, for lack of a better term, enjoy life?
Mm.
I mean,
Well,
because everything you've said, I can't even fathom
mhm.
not sinking in to a deep depression.
Yeah, it is so difficult. So I've competed in like the Prescott Poetry Slam and won first place. I've gotten really involved in the local music scene here and done karaoke, and made friends with a lot of local musicians to where I fit in because of my creativeness, and so it's really fulfilling. I live in a even though I have to leave a lot to get fresh air, there's a lot of deer and wildlife that come through my yard. And so that's incredibly comforting. I wrote a blog for the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation called Wild Care for No Cure, about, kind of just drawing comfort from the deer and the wildlife, and even singing to the deer. And so it's just always trying my best. But then, there's a book that I read about oscillating between acceptance and distraction when you have this many conditions. And so you can't just distract yourself all the time with hot tubs and cold plunges
No,
and
you can't.
massages and
It would be great if you could,
right.
but
It would be
no
great.
one can.
No, and people expect you to always be positive. It's really strange. Um, I might need
Yeah,
to plug in my laptop here.
okay.
Um, can you pause us? Sorry, I should have had my cord out. Sorry.
Jessica, why
Mhm.
can't you always be positive despite all of your health conditions? why can't you be more positive? In case anyone thinks I'm actually serious, I'm not. I'm not at all. But if you're just listening to this and can't view my handsome face, here's your clue that what I just said was pure sarcasm. But that was what we were talking about before the break. Uh, People expecting you, and I think people expect this from a lot of people with disabilities,
Mhm.
strangely, that we should always be positive. So, what is that like for you?
It does feel like that. It feels like people expect you to be positive when they they can complain about like their little problems that are occurring in their day. But then if I complain about something incredibly major that's affecting my ability to even survive and function, I'm bringing other people down or whatever. And yeah, I get that I have a lot of stuff going on, so I do have to kind of manage that with other people in a way, but it's not exactly easy. My mom, she was just negative, and I would say, "Is there anything positive that happened?" And now I realize that it is hard sometimes to even find one positive thing or to work on that neuroplasticity or to get your brain waves, to get into some different grooves. And it
Yeah,
does kind of, you do need other people and you do need support and love and community and
yeah,
enriching things, and you need a hand to hold, comfort. We're human beings, and we are even more so to a higher level, suffering to where we
yeah.
do need comfort. And people will sometimes say, well, you're an adult or something like that. And well, yes, but I'm a vulnerable adult and I am in pain. And I do go back to a childlike state sometime because of the level of suffering that I'm enduring.
What is that supposed to mean? You're an adult? So, I, I mean, that just boggles my mind. It's like when
It's
you become an adult, you you don't suffer. Everyone knows that everything is peachy keen in life, and it's just one powerful roller coaster of enjoyment and positivity all the time. There's no such thing as a midlife crisis. No
right.
one really gets divorced at all.
And
Again,
yeah.
sarcasm alert. It
Mhm.
just the fact that you're an adult does not negate the things you just mentioned that you clearly need and deserve.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. So a lot of people with EDS have like wheelchairs and a bunch of different mobility assistance devices, braces all over. We'll have like special things for our fingers. I haven't gotten a lot of that. I've just kind of been in a weird state where I've been trying to survive. And so yeah, it's a lot. Like you're saying, it's like I can't even address everything because there's so much to address. And so the reality of it is that it's difficult and I need help. And um, the sicker you are, the more people will drop you. The longer you're sicker, the sicker you are, the less support you're going to get. And so it becomes more and more and more of a challenge over time to where you're just by yourself trying to deal with all, a lot of people in my condition like live with their parents, for example, but I live alone, and it's not exactly easy, with a broken back and joints that just fall out of place. That's kind of what happens sometimes with EDS. And so, yeah, it's not easy. And um, I do have some mental conditions as a result, and that will get judged as well. So I have like PTSD, it's called chronic illness, and medical PTSD, two different kinds. And the medical is like from medical trauma.
Yeah.
And so I was recently wrongfully Title 36'd.
What is that? What does that mean?
So I didn't know what it meant, but it means that all of your rights are taken and that you're put into a psychiatric hospital and you are locked in there, and you're not an American citizen with rights anymore. You're not a sick person with disabilities or illnesses. You are a mental health patient, period. Subject to judgment, even if it's wrong, as a medical patient. For someone with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome who looks like I do, who looks healthy, it is incredibly dangerous to be put in that position. They said they didn't have any of my medical records. And so my discharge paperwork said that I had fibromyalgia and that I was delusional and in psychosis. And I was delusional because I said I couldn't breathe the air because it's in an industrial area, this facility. And I was forced to go to this area that I drive through as fast as I possibly can. And these are diagnosed conditions. I have x-rays, I have proof of all of these diagnoses. And then my notes say I'm delusional and I have fibromyalgia and I don't have any other conditions. As somebody with a broken back and a body that I got bruised from a massage the other day. I have a giant bruise on my leg, and then I got bruised recently from bug bites, from scratching bug bites. As somebody who's that sensitive, to not be accommodated, to be told that you're crazy and to be told that you're delusional and to be held against your will and to have your rights taken away and have none of your conditions accommodated is absolutely the most terrifying thing that you could possibly go through. I wasn't given my mouth guard. I was all night long, I didn't have my mouth guard, so I couldn't sleep. My jaw was hurting. I was right next to all of these people. There was just lines of people, and we were in beds all night long. And I'm sorry, chairs all night long, reclining chairs. And so somebody with as many conditions as I have is just put into this random situation. So there was people withdrawing from drugs. Obviously, I don't take drugs that I'm going to withdraw from, even though I have plenty of conditions that would justify that. But I'm right next to somebody who's withdrawing from hard drugs all night long. They're giving him more and more and more and more medications. He's becoming more and more delusional or delirious, excuse me. And he's flailing around violently, thrashing around violently all night long, right next to me, jumping up. I'm jumping up into the corner and covering myself with the pillow that they gave me, and that they made it seem like I was a princess because I got my pillow. And there was people next to me with their arms and their necks cut up, completely thick bandaged. Obviously, I've never done anything like that. They're intrusive thoughts. It's called passive suicidal thoughts. And so, you have to have the proper support and love in order to help those passive suicidal thoughts and treatment and care from people around you. But, I'm not really getting that. I'm getting the opposite of that, to where I'm being institutionalized. So I was released in less than 24 hours. They kept telling me, you're going to have to stay for 72 hours. It's a mandatory hold. You've been titled. What does this mean? So I was picked up that morning. I had done music therapy and as part of work. And then I had driven the fiddle player home, and we had a nice time at this beautiful cafe for a minute. And then I came home briefly, and somebody showed up at my place with a crisis worker and blocked my car in. and started questioning me. And I was on my way to a massage appointment. So I asked them to leave. And then I called the person and said, "You're making my suicidal thoughts worse." And on my way out of my massage appointment, I was put in handcuffs by the police. They stopped me. I've never been put in handcuffs. I've never been put in a police car. The handcuffs hurt my wrist. My wrist still hurts from the handcuffs. They just stopped me. They just came up on me. I'm walking out of my massage appointment, and these police officers from the Prescott Police Department just overtake me and grab me. And they don't say what they're doing. I say, "What is going on here? What are you doing? Am I being arrested right now?" And they say, "No, you're not being arrested. You're being titled." I say, "What does that mean?" Title 36. They don't even explain it to me. They have no process for this. They just walk up to people and put them in handcuffs. People who have committed crimes are given Miranda rights and red rights as part of the arrest process. But people who are wrongfully put into a mental hospital can't be told what's happening. And then they made it a big deal that I needed my cushions. There's no cushions in the back of a police car, apparently. It's just a hard. So I needed my cushions, and they made it a big deal. And then when I talked to the police officer afterwards, he made it seem like it was a big deal that they let me have my cushions. They wouldn't remove the handcuffs. I was injured, icing my wrist for days afterwards. It's still injured. And when I was taken to the hospital, I was smelling all these chemicals and telling them I'm being made sick, that the accommodations are not good for my back. They make you wear these clothes, they make you put on these clothes, and they take all your things. And the clothes were not good for my back. They were hurting, pulling. And then even in the facility, in the psychiatric hospital, the phone is elevated off of it's like kind of like an old school payphone. And the cord is so short that there was no way for me to sit on a chair and talk on the phone. I was trying to call human rights organizations, Americans with Disabilities Act, and other organizations that are similar to that. And they were saying, this is going to take a 30-minute phone call. But I wasn't being accommodated to make that phone call while I was in there. They said, "Sorry, this is all we have." The same thing with the seats. "This is all we have," or the beds. "This is all we have." And they kept saying, "We're not a medical facility." Well, then why am I here? Why is a medical patient not only being held against her will in a non-medical facility and not being accommodated, but you guys aren't even aware of my conditions and don't even believe me and don't. It's pretty much the most terrifying, go ahead.
So you weren't supposed to be in there for 72 hours. How did you get out in just 24 hours?
Less than 24 hours. It was a triage situation, is what the nurse practitioner said when she finally saw me. And she said, "You know that this facility is for people who have attempted suicide and who are withdrawing from drugs, right?"
Yeah, you should not have been there at all.
Absolutely not. I was sabotaged and antagonized. The whole situation was antagonized. I was asking for help, and I was punished as
I think your camera's frozen.
chemicals or my needs. I'm punished for it. So my survival has really become dependent on my silence.
That must be incredibly difficult and incredibly heartbreaking that you really can't self-advocate for yourself, because when you do, you run the risk of getting in trouble. And we're back.
Oh, good. Sorry. My internet.
So, as I was saying, that must be incredibly difficult and extremely heartbreaking for you because you can't really advocate for yourself because when you do, you inevitably put yourself, through no fault of your own, in danger, in
Mhm.
jeopardy.
Yeah, I do. And then even sometimes I feel like, should I even tell somebody that I have chemical sensitivity? Because there's been times where it's been used against me, and then I end up so much sicker and I can't stay where I am. Or so I moved to Sedona for about 9 months, and I still had some chemical things there. And when I would leave and try to go get fresh air elsewhere, I was having more issues. There was way more chemicals when I was out. And then I got stung by scorpions there, in the back of the head and on the knee. And that was over a year ago. And I can still tell that I'm not the same as I was before, my pain and other things. It was really bad initially. And so it's like I'll try to do something to better my situation. And then a lot of times it ends up, I'll end up worse off or something. There's always dangers. And people do judge me as like a baby, like I was saying, or you know how like a child will fall and they'll cry or something, and they're not really injured. But people with EDS can get, and in spina bifida and brain injury, we can get injured very, very, very easily. And we are really, really fragile. Um, it's just the reality of it. It's it's our genetics, our body, and we can't really change that. I mean, we can do our best. So we were talking about positivity before,
Yeah.
and I think my internet or my something happened with my computer, but it is important still to try to be positive and to try to uplift yourself and be happy and find joy and find smiles and do all these things. That's obviously those things are going to make you feel somewhat better. But it's just the reality is you can only do so much.
So let's talk more about your creative output. You're a author, a
Mhm.
poet. You hang around a lot of local musicians. Are you yourself a musician?
I sing a little bit. Because of EDS, I can't really play string instruments. If you can see, my joints just fold. And I used to have a piano, but then just with my neck and back, it wasn't. And so, yeah, I mostly just sing, and I'm thinking about trying something called the dulcimer that looks like it might work for someone like me. But yeah, I like to write, and that's become more difficult with pain. So sometimes lately I've just been like saying a poem out loud and then recording it instead of writing it. And that has helped with my pain. My pain's gotten worse and worse with writing. And so I'm not doing a whole lot of writing
Wow.
anymore. I'm working with a lady who wrote a book about her family, and I might be doing like the typefacing and the layout for it for her. But just even being on the computer now is hurting me.
Wow.
Hmm. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So,
So
what else do you do to cope with?
a lot of
Or,
meditating.
ah,
I've listened to more meditations, guided meditations, than I can tell you. And then I started to lead them myself, leading the guided meditations, just naturally, maybe thinking a little bit ahead of time about that. And then, so that kind of obviously flows right into writing. And it's just a different type of writing where it's a little less painful and therapeutic. And then I've kind of enjoyed that, actually, the guiding, because it kind of gets old after a while. You've listened to thousands of meditations. It's hard to continue to do sometimes. So I do a lot of that. I listen to like YouTube stuff and watch shows. Um, and then like a lot of interacting with wildlife and walking and sort of getting out to smaller areas and quiet areas and nature and yeah, watching the music locally. There's great like open mics locally and just gigs locally with really awesome musicians, friends and friends of friends and that kind of thing. It's special. It's really, really special.
Let's talk about feeling dropped or abandoned by people. Because that can be extremely isolating, that can kick up depression or other thoughts.
I might just move here.
Yeah,
My back starts to get sore and my legs start to kind of
yeah.
tingle, so I have to move around more than most. So the abandonment, um, you want other people to have joy and live their lives and find happiness and, lead enriching lives and things. But when you're this sick, you do kind of tend to get left behind a little bit, and everybody else kind of goes about their lives and they sort of forget about you. Um, and they don't necessarily try to accommodate you or try to include you, or it almost seems like it becomes the opposite where people start to want to exclude you so that you're not hindering their abilities
Employment.
or enjoyment, freedom, options.
Yeah.
And people start to become almost annoyed with you, with your needs, and even your rights. So it's almost like I don't really have rights, and people who use chemicals have more rights than I do, um, on their, property or on their body or different things like that. They have those rights. But then if I am sick to the point where I'm underweight and I can't go out somewhere or I can't be at home or something like that, my rights are not protected. I just have to go and leave and find fresh air. And so with somebody who is disabled, as I am, with all these different limitations and pain and all of these different conditions, that's like almost impossible. And then it becomes almost impossible to survive. And so a lot of people with chemical sensitivity will look for housing for a long time. One guy, he was a lab chemist, and he looked for 5 years. He hosts a podcast, a chemical sensitivity podcast. And he ended up sleeping on his parents' screen porch in Connecticut.
Wow.
He uses heated blankets to stay alive in the
Wow.
winter.
Damn.
Yeah, that's how extreme. It's literal life and death. And people wear perfumes or they have air fresheners in their home. And this is all poison. It's all toxic chemicals. And people are obsessed with like weed spray
Yeah.
that doesn't just hurt people like me, that hurts the planet.
Yeah.
That trickles down to the bees and the butterflies and the
Yeah.
lizards and the birds. It, my property is not like that. And I don't have a bug problem because it's an ecosystem that works together. It
I want
balances each other.
I want to go back to something you'd said a while ago, that you don't look sick, and people have a hard time believing that. In fact, they would much rather doubt you than
Sorry.
believe you.
I'm cocking my nails. Mm-hmm.
And isn't that in itself a type of being objectified?
Yeah, we had talked about objectification, hadn't we?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it is. That's kind of the theme of my life, really, is, being objectified, where people will think I'm healthy. They'll think I'm dramatic. They'll think I'm whatever judgment they want to make. I'm doing too much of this, or I'm doing too much of that, or not enough of this, or I need to do that, or I need to try this, or um, and then yeah, it does become objectification where I go out in public and women will give me dirty looks. It's very common. And
why?
I
Why?
guess they're threatened by my appearance, maybe, or
Oh,
um and then a lot of men will want to date me, but they won't want to help me
really
or
did you? Yeah,
care about me or settle down with me or include me in their lives or treat me like a human being.
yeah.
And I just become this object for men and for women and for the world of, this is who you are. And yeah, it just becomes exhausting, really. I'm asked out almost every day, and typically they cannot accommodate me. And then they continue to push why they can accommodate me or how, or I'm gaslight my condition or downplay my symptoms or, whatever it is. It's an argument. And then
So
yeah.
it's a argument even before you go out with them. Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
like
that spells a great, healthy way to start a relationship.
it becomes trying to convince me that my needs aren't valid or that they can be adjusted or those lines can be blurred or moved or just dismissing in some way. It's always like dismissing what I say. And it's become to the point where I don't even want to tell people anymore why I'm not able to see them or willing to, because nobody gets it.
No,
Even this whole interview, I feel like is going to be not saying anything bad about you, but just people will find a way to judge it and to turn it around to say, well, they said she was delusional and she has fibromyalgia. Well, that must be the truth, or whatever.
yeah,
Um, but then you do have to rise above it and know your own truth, know what helps you, and love yourself. And that's not easy when you're not getting a whole lot of love from the world.
no,
But you have to keep trying. Sorry for my squeaky chair.
no. We've talked about a lot of topics in
Mm.
this episode, and
Mhm.
I like to think and I like to hope that both people with disabilities and those who have yet to discover or embrace their own disabilities listen and watch this show. As my guest, what do you hope that people with disabilities take away from everything we've talked about in this episode? And what do
Um,
you hope that those who have yet to discover or embrace their own disabilities take away from this episode?
that's a really good question. So I guess disabled people, I hope that they just realize that they're not alone and that their pain, internal and external, is valid and recognized and cared. You know, somebody actually, people do care that you're hurting, even if you don't know those people. You know, people like me who are empathetic and empathic, we actually hurt sometimes when we hear about other people hurting and, you know, or cry or something. And so there is that care within the community, that love. And then for people who haven't embraced it, just, I guess, to just go easy on yourself and let yourself embrace your illnesses in your own time and in your own way. And nobody else can push you to accept, to have that perfect balance of acceptance and distraction and oscillating between the two. And nobody's perfect,
What
you
do
know.
you hope that people remember about you and your story and what you've talked about and what you've shared during this episode?
Um, well, maybe what we were saying about not judging a book by its cover and always realizing that there might be something or a lot of things that you don't know about a person. And then also that love is the only way. That's the last line in my book. That even though I might screw that up sometimes and get angry, that that's always the goal. And even if I am getting angry, it's probably because I'm asking for love. And so that's really it. That even if you get angry at somebody else, maybe try to think of what they've done for you that you could be grateful for. Um, and and just always just trying to go back to love and non-judgment.
Before we go, uh, can you tell us again the name of your book and where someone can get it?
Yeah, it's called Arizona Rain: Adventures in Life, Love, and Loss That Span Generations. That's the subtitle. You can get it on Barnes and Noble, and then also in Prescott here locally at a few bookstores and museums.
Jessica, I want to thank you for coming on and for sharing your story or a bit of it. I hope you will consider coming back on. It's been delightful to get to talk to you, and I hope this episode is very helpful in letting people know that they're not alone, even when they're dealing with so many health issues or other issues. And so that's my hope for this episode. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.